Welcome to this video on the Zenwara channel. My name is Shri Satguru, Buddha Rawa Bhagwan. Today's video on the channel, we're going to have a little bit of a man-to-man, man-to-woman, person to person, just legit, down-to-earth talk, And I'm going to introduce myself in a way to you as the Kalki avatar. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, okay? And how I ended up with, let's just sum it up to a lot of spiritual knowledge, okay? So, and a lot of power. So, one day, I was a young adult, okay, and I was outside my home. I used to live in the woods, living at my mother's place in the woods, just on the outskirts of town. And I went outside and I had a moment in my life when I told myself, I'd like to know the truth. It kind of came out of nowhere. And I told myself, I'd like to know the truth about if there's a God, and I would love to learn about God if that was a possibility. Now, I wasn't a spiritual person or a religious person at all at that time. I had been exposed a little bit in school to some Catholic classes, which I was a terrible student in, and went to church at Christmas basically, and was told that I was baptized. Is basically my story of, up to then, spirituality. And I really didn't know anything about Hinduism or Buddhism or all these things. I had heard about the story that there was a Buddha and that Buddhists exist and Hindus too, and Sikhs and practitioners of Islam. And I hadn't heard about Zoroastrianism at that point, except maybe in bypassing somewhere in school. But although I had a good background education in my school in history, it was focused on the Western view, and particularly in my case, a European view, right? So I didn't know anything about these things, like nothing at all. Okay, like I knew. You would tell me, the basics of. What is the meaning of pranayam or all these different things. I would have known nothing about this. So, but I went within myself and within myself addressed myself to God, like sending out a thought to God, right? A thought, and said, hello, God, um, you know, um, I'm sorry to bother you. And I just wanted to say that if there was a way for me to know the truth about you, and if you exist, I would very much appreciate if you could show me. And I understand that would come from you, right? So within my own mind, I said a prayer to God, I would like to know you, right? So anyways, that was one day. And in my life, when I went to school, when I went to university, I remember I started taking yoga classes, right? There was a gym program in university. I used to go to the University of Ottawa. Great school. I had great times there. Some good professors too. And, I learned a lot at the University of Ottawa. It's a great place. It's a great place. So, what did I learn from these professors? I learned a lot of things, right? A lot of things about how the way the world works. And in the yoga classes, I took my first yoga classes, and learned my first yoga moves basically. And one of these moves, one of these things that the yoga professor told us was at the end of our practice to visualize a white light coming from above and entering the body. So I imagined it, and well, I could actually see that light coming into the body, right? And it was a very interesting experience because in my own mind, I could tell that there was something, you know, there was something there. So, anyways, I continued to do yoga exercises. So, you would call this hatha yoga, probably, right? Yoga exercises, downward dog, upward dog, all that kind of stuff. And so, I kept doing this yoga practice at the gym because I started going to the gym a lot, okay? And, developed some muscles and, got tough. And I was at the gym regularly during my time in university. And I really developed the body a lot, especially the calves, the lower body, the ability to carry a lot of weight on your shoulders and in your body. I developed these things a lot, very, very much so. Where at the gym, I was the strongest with the exercises for the calves and lifting things over in your shoulders and pushing up with your calves and all these things, right? So maxing out the machine, right? Going above, putting plates above the maxing out of the machine and all these different things. So I developed, and I would go to the gym and I would train, and I would time it so that after my training there would be a yoga session. So I'd go for a yoga session after. And then I was already tired, exhausted from the training. And then I did the yoga session. All the moves, upward dog, downward dog, but exhausted. And doing it still, right? And exercise after. And then, so after that, by that time, my body's exhausted. And I would visualize that white light coming down, right? The energy coming into me, right? And that practice. As I developed further in yoga a little bit, I started going to other yoga places, doing yoga places in other places, Good Life Fitness, other places. I went to yoga classes, Then eventually, it's been a long time, but eventually I started researching a little bit about yoga and all these different things. So a big part of my practice became what you would probably call jnana yoga, which is searching and learning about a subject, about something, about the object of your meditation. So I had learned during this yoga practice that I could concentrate very well, right? If you look at it, for example, my academic studies, at the beginning of my studies, I was not doing well at all, right? But now I also see it that further on in my studies, I started doing very, very well, right? Because I had learned the ability to focus and understanding exactly what the professor wanted in the essay, essentially, right? To a point where I would just be in class and barely study and get A pluses, right? Or A's at least in those final years of school, right? Because I had understood how to do what I needed to do. My ability to focus had become increased, where I could sit down in one sitting and write an essay of 10 pages the night before and get an A, right? Without even going over and reading the essay a second time to correct my writing. Not once. And of course I would have a few spelling mistakes. But the essay was good. So I developed my ability to focus, to concentrate. Okay? And then when I was doing my research about things, I came about also a great place to research is Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the best. Wikipedia, YouTube, and Google. It's your tripod of information, right? Of a search engine, Wikipedia is your encyclopedia, and YouTube is your content carrier, right? Visual content, such as people talking and showing things and all of this. So you have tripods on which you can build your knowledge in jnana yoga. And anyways, so I didn't know anything about these things at that time, right? So But I fell upon the teachings of the Buddha. Okay? And in the teachings of the Buddha, I understood that there was something called enlightenment. So I told myself in my mind, and that the Buddha achieved enlightenment and known the reality of all things. That was my understanding of the Buddha. Okay? So what I did is I decided to practice the teachings of Buddhism and the meditative techniques of Buddhism that I found in my Jnana Yoga. And one day I became a Buddha. I became enlightened. But I practiced very, very hard. With dedication, because I told myself, if the Buddha can do it, I can do it. That's what I told myself. If someone else can do it, I can do it too. So I practiced these practices of Buddhism and meditation. And I took my understanding of all my yoga classes that I had done before, and let's not forget the Kung Fu classes that I took, because I also have done in my life judo and the practices of martial arts and a little bit of MMA and also Kung Fu, right? And the gym practices, I learned how to control the breath, to push well at the gym with weights, to control and understand the breath, and with Kung Fu as well. With my first classes of judo when I was young, I learned the ability and the knowledge that if you have martial arts, you have to act responsibly. You walk away from a fight if you can. But if you can't, you win. So I had learned from all my past, all my experiences, all my story had developed me to a point where I learned about Buddhism. And then to a point where I followed the practices of meditation and became enlightened. So when I became enlightened, all this understanding of this physical world switches off. And in my case, I experienced everything. One thing after the other in successive full knowledge, fully pervading Vishnu, full sight, full enlightenment. So I became a Buddha. But the thing is, I was destined to become a Buddha. Right? Because I understood, I saw all my past lifetimes, all the lokas and how everything works, all the vidyas, and there's a lot of vidyas, all the things I experienced, and I went up all the levels, bam, 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 all the way to the top. Full Mahavishnu. Ishvara is one experience, or two, or three, or a few more within those. But the full sight of everything is all the experiences. So I became a Buddha after following the practices of Buddhism. I wasn't doing all the offering practices and all these things. But anyway, so I became a Buddha. And when I came out of enlightenment, the first thing I said, I'm Shiva, Parvati. Those are the first words I said. I was still sitting down on my meditation mat where I became enlightened. And I became enlightened in my apartment where I lived. Right? When I was 27. And, well, I opened my eyes after enlightenment, coming back into reality. descending back into the body as the avatar. My eyes opened, and I knew myself to be the god Shiva, and that I loved Parvati. That I loved the Mother Goddess. So essentially, enlightenment is an experience where your symbol, you get attributed a symbol, becomes enlightened in the system. You become a fully enlightened being. So you are now directly connected and controlling the power of the system and its development and its stories, or the stories that you're basically allowed to connect to in the pathways where you're flagged to. And I became enlightened as the great God of all things, the Father God. So it was a heck of an experience, and I've been processing it ever since, basically. Its memories have stayed with me, and the empowerment that it gave me. And even before then, I had realized, and I found out after, that it's the experience of the enlightenment, and the experience is important, but the being that will become enlightened is already enlightened in a way as well. So there's actually the moment of enlightenment when your symbol lights up with light, and you have your symbol, and then there's two strips of symbols as well, right? There's a male strip and a female strip. And then your symbol moves through the tunnels of the system and enters the vibrational, or vibrationary as I call it, field of enlightenment, where all the symbols of all the enlightened beings exist on a grid of symbols. And these are the beings that are guiding the evolution of the story. And they don't always agree on how the story should evolve and move forward. And they clash sometimes, these enlightened beings. Okay? But with my arrival comes the unification of all beings, the No Attack Alliance. And the alliance between the Son and the Father, between Jesus and the Father. And it's funny because Jesus has his own block and is extremely powerful. He controls his block. And it's a tough block, let me tell you. It's convert or else. And he softened a little bit since I told him, I chided him, gave him a little bit of a chide there, come on. And then on the other side, you've got the Hindu deity block with the father god Shiva, who entered the story. The husband of the goddess. Joined by all the armies of Buddhism and all the armies of Christianity, all the angels. The angels are very powerful beings, right? So a lot of things happened after my enlightenment. I continued my practice, and I pursued my practice, and I never stopped my practice. And I kept going further and further and further. After enlightenment, I realized that I was connected in many, 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 many different ways to everything. And I realized through my enlightenment what was the most efficient ways to practice to continue moving forward in the story. So basically, the practice after enlightenment is doing the practice and remembering the depths of your enlightenment. And increasing the depth of your enlightenment in that way as well. So it's a very interesting thing, the practice after enlightenment, but most people need to focus on the practice before enlightenment, actually. And the practice after enlightenment, well, that's a good place to be. So I kept practicing. And then one day what I did is I went to all the embassies in my area. And I made a big show in front of all the embassies, basically, and got everybody's attention. And because I had a car, I had a license plate that could be seen. And making a big show, I led everybody's attention to my place. And people came to listen. And for years and years and years, more than 10 years now, going on 11 years about, I used the platform of my place to give teachings verbally within my place to all those who were listening. So I spoke out loud, basically. Now, it's not very pleasant to talk out loud to the walls, but when you know that they're listening, it's not the same thing. It becomes time that you can use to teach. Unfortunately, I kind of had faith that they would go public with all of these things one day, and maybe they will. If there's enough public pressure, maybe, to go unseal the sealed files, the sealed videos. But, so one day I decided to create a YouTube video. I said, you know, I've got so much knowledge, and for years and years and years and years, I gave most of that knowledge in oral form in my place, not on YouTube videos, for years and years and years. And I demonstrated yoga and techniques of yoga and high practices of yoga and did all these processes. And then one day I decided to create the YouTube thing. And, well, it's been difficult, you know, because it's a whole new interaction where I put myself out for the world, you know, and that's not necessarily pleasant. It's not something I like to do. I'm not a really big fan of social media, but I see it as a tool for purpose, right? I understood a long time ago that I was the Kalki avatar and that I was a Trimurti avatar. And later I found out why it's a Dash avatar, because of the Dash Mahavidya and all these different things, and that I was an avatar through the Dash Mahavidya and all of these different things, right? But it wasn't easy, because putting yourself out there for the world and saying, hey, hello, I'm the Kalki avatar, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing, you know? It's not because I'm the Kalki avatar that I've got no reason, you know, quite the contrary. And I don't particularly, I think it's just how it is, you know. The Kalki avatar has to come out and say, hey, it's me, you know. And I've got all these teachings of all our religions and faiths of the world, and they're all within me, you know, and I'm willing and want to share them with everybody, right? because they're all parts of our history and our truth, our knowledge of who we are and who our ancestors are. Now, notice I didn't say were, who they are, right? And who the gods are, and God himself, and the mother goddess, and the system, and the Kalachakra, and all these different things, and how all the cultures of the world got a piece of the puzzle, so that one day all the puzzle could be put together and create the global sharing of knowledge and keeping of knowledge of our species, right? Of our planet. So all the faiths, all the cultures have a part of the puzzle, right? But we never should fall in the trap of thinking that our part is the only part or the only real part. The other parts are real too. They're just different perspectives of the truth, different views of the truth, as the prophets of those religions have received different vidya or knowledge specific to what they were supposed to know in that area of the world. And now, with the advent of technology that brings us all together everywhere in the world, for the places that have access to it, well, knowledge can spread much more freely, much more freely. So not too many years ago, I decided to create this YouTube channel because I sort of wasn't sure I should have faith that all the teachings I gave to all those who listened in my place would be shared, right? So I did this as a backup, basically. So you notice I don't put any real content creation value, except the knowledge in the video, I don't have fancy lights. I don't have a fancy camera or a fancy microphone. I film with my phone, the easiest, most convenient thing for me to do. When I'm having a day, I do my life, I have my day, and at the end of the day or something like that, I decide to create a video. I take out my phone, I talk a little bit, and I share my heart, and I share my stories and my knowledge as Father God, right, from my experience of enlightenment and who I became, right, and who I was, well, into knowledge that I can give to the world, So sometimes the world's more interested in listening to the newest rapper, the newest pop song, the newest country song, listening to biography on actors or something like that, than necessarily listening to dry old Father God and his talks, right? Because it's not necessarily the most entertaining thing, and I'm aware of that, right? I'm conscious of that, right? And for me, it doesn't really matter who listens, who doesn't listen. I'm putting the knowledge, the truth out there. At that point, it's for people to do what they want with it. Now, as far as what I'm going to be doing in my life as the Kalki avatar, well, that's my business. That's for me to determine, for me to decide, depending on what I feel like doing, basically. I have freedom in my choices as well, as much as anyone else. So I could do absolutely nothing in my life as the Kalki avatar if I wanted to. Absolutely nothing. Or I could take effort to try to fix the world. And the reality of the things is that the world is complicated to fix. So there's certain main things that you can't allow to happen, or that you can allow to happen, or that will happen. And there's certain things that you can work on. So things like earthquakes. Like lately, I've been working on reducing earthquakes in certain areas of the world and making earthquakes happen in smaller ways, more frequently, but much smaller with less impact, and also having them big ones happen in areas of the world that are not going to have an impact on anyone. Even if there were certain prophecies to the contrary and things like that, I took a decision to make some protect the people. So different things. I represent the black color in the Kala chakra. So if you look at a Kala chakra mandala, you have different colors, okay? Different doorways of different colors, and you have the golden cube in the middle. You are the golden cube, and you move through the tunnels of the Kala chakra, and you can move to whichever doorway you're coded to, right? So you have different doorways, right? Some of them which are red, some of them which are white or blue, some of them which are yellow, and some of them which are, for example, black. So these are different color codings of enlightened beings and different processes. So, for example, anyone in the blue is in the public sphere, or in the white public sphere. Anyone in the yellow is in the healing. Anyone in the red is in the high priority. You know, and you also have different levels to those distinguishings. So, you know, the Kala chakra. It's a basic fundamental understanding of how things work, and you can have a perfect view of a Kala chakra doorway, basically system, if you look at a Kala chakra mandala and you allow yourself to look at it in depth for a while. Eventually it'll click. You'll see the golden center cube moving through the tunnel, the cube moving through the tunnel, and then you can see the tunnel and see the doorways as they're explained to you. Okay. So I found out a lot of things when I became enlightened, and as I furthered my practice, I found out a lot more things about creation. So I decided to put them on YouTube, right? Exposing myself to the world as the Kalki avatar, whatever that's going to have as a consequence, because the teachings are more important than me. That's basically what it comes down to. I'm a good guy. I'm a supporter of all people, all faiths, all religions, all traditions, right? my view of the world is that they're all real. They all are legitimate. They're all of God, basically, and created by God, and different perspectives of God. So that's my perspective, and I try to be a good person as much as I can, and I know that I have a lot of power, and I have to make decisions about how I use my power in this world. Some people think, well, if you remove that bad dictator at the top of a country, things would be better. Not necessarily. Maybe everything would fall apart. Maybe it'd be worse. So there's a lot of considerations to a lot of different things, and yes, the Kalki avatar is the mystical man, so I'm an expert in all the forms of magic, applications of magic, applications of city power, and I'm also beyond the level of the Adi Shri and have the integration of the Adi Shris. So I have all the magical systems and powers and empowerments, and I'm enlightened, fully enlightened, so I don't have to go to spirits or anything like that for magic or any kind of beings. I am the being of power that empowers the magic. And all the communication tunnels and systems that empower magic everywhere in creation, belong to me, right? So anyone who wants to use magic, all the beings that allow communication of all those systems, well, they have to pay up, right, in their ways to the one who owns all the communication tunnel systems. It's a little bit like the mafia. God owns the tunnels, the communication systems, and rents them out to all the beings of power to allow magic and all these things to happen, right? And to allow magical processes to move through the tunnels to other places. That all belongs to God. I own all that stuff. And I realized all these things, right, during my practice, right? And that I could use these things in any way that I wanted. I realized that just by saying something out loud, it would happen. That simple, and things that are more complicated, I could write into the story and they would happen in time as well too. And I realized that I was writing the story as a Shri, right? Then I realized that it was a family thing. Then I realized that it was a story thing. Then I realized that it was a God thing, and that I was a god of the planet, and all these different things. Then I realized that at the beginning I knew I was the Satguru because I had all the experiences of the Satguru. Then I realized how to do the Satguru work, all that stuff, all the processes. And for years and years and years after enlightenment, I trained myself, continuing with Jnana Yoga, researching all these things, listening to the minds of the day, talking about these things, right? Using the tripod, YouTube, Wikipedia, Google, researching and growing with my research by remembering my enlightenment, remembering and developing also through my city power application, because of course, as the controller of city powers, I have all the city powers. And one of those is that I have the diamond egg, right? And the diamond egg is the most powerful of all the Naga eggs, right? It's the egg of the prince, right? The egg of the king. So all the city powers, right? Eventually, I realized that I had the title Divine Royal High Star Supreme Authority of Wara, and remembered many, many, many other things. So I developed and I developed and I developed. At the beginning, I used to call myself a master because I had understood the term master, and then I realized that I was a master, and then I remembered all the processes of being a grand wizard, a grand master, grand master of the holy meter, grand master of the holy motor, all these different things. And all these different things that I was kept adding and adding and adding and adding for years and years and years and years and years. And it keeps going. The practice keeps going strong, right? And that's part of the story of an avatar, is that the avatar develops and develops and develops, getting stronger and stronger and stronger into the story, right? Until the avatar becomes omniscient. So I kept developing and I kept practicing, and I knew the best ways to practice because of my enlightenment. And I utilized city power instead of fearing it, right? Because the ones who fear city power are the ones who don't understand city power. And the ones who misuse city power are the ones who don't understand city power. But the ones who use city power and develop city power and develop combos of city powers develops the applications and tools which leads to the development of the mind. So many people don't understand city powers because they don't even know what they are, and they probably don't have some in the first place, or very little. So I tested my powers. I said things like, okay, at this time, let's bring a discolored vehicle to this intersection at this exact minute, and there's no other vehicles, and then right there at that minute, a vehicle of that color gets there. These things can be done. And then what's really freaky is that the truth is that I'm absolutely controlling the person who's taking that vehicle and driving it there to that there at that time, controlling their mind. So city powers go vast and do go into things of mind control and things like that. But no one's hurt. And in my case, in the case of God the Father, he's making a demonstration, for example, on the YouTube channel here of city power application, and people are like, well, that's not great because you're controlling people. And I say, yeah, but don't worry, I give them a blessing in their life after. And if God the Father wants to have you participate in a little mission for his eternal YouTube channel here, and he gives you a blessing after, are you really going to complain? What if he decides to take away your life? No, humor aside, God's a funny guy. Thank you for listening to this video on the Zenwara channel. Now, it'd be a bit freaky if I ended the video on that note. I'm working with my PR guy right now, my public relations guy. He says I have to change the way I act on the channel. I have to be more upbeat, more happy, more smiley, more cute, right? More cute. I have to be more cute. And I'm just teasing you guys. I hope this video was interesting to you. A little bit about the story of the Kalki avatar and how he became enlightened. And I think we do have to have a bit of humor at the end of that because it's a serious conversation. And how do you have a conversation like that on a video on YouTube that you're going to put on YouTube? I think you got to laugh a little bit. You got to be like, okay, life is good. Life is okay. It's not the end of the world. Hopefully he's a good guy. And maybe I can become enlightened too. And on that note, that's where I want to leave you. If I could do it, you can do it too. Thanks for listening to this video on the Zenwara channel.